What is up? Welcome back to another video. Sorry that there's no face cam in this video. I am just not feeling very well, so yeah, I just won't be doing a face cam. But in this video we will be talking about specifically inverse fair value gaps, what they are, and how I use them. So this won't be a strategy video. This will just be a educational video explaining what inverse value gaps are and more importantly how I use them in the markets. Now I do trade live every day in Discord um for free. So in the description there's a link to my Discord if you want to join that, and you get access to watching me trade live for free every day. Yeah, just feel free to join that, but let's jump straight into it. So first of all, what is a inverse fair value gap? Now, excuse me, all a inverse fair value gap is a fair value gap that has been disrespected and we want to use it for support or resistance basically. So we want to see a bounce off of the fair value gap, or we want to see the inverse fair value gap get left open. So first of all, if you don't know what a fair value gap is, then all a fair value gap is a imbalance in the market. So as you can see here, we have a fair value gap. One way of finding these fair value gaps is if you count 3 candles. So here we have 1, 2, 3. The first and the third candle can't be touching. Their wicks or their bodies can't be touching. There just has to be a gap, and that is how fair value gaps are created. So as you can see, there is a fair value gap here. This is a bearish fair value gap. There are 2 types of fair value gaps. You have bullish fair value gaps, which are fair value gaps created from bullish candles, and then you have bearish fair value gaps, which is a fair value gap created from a bearish candle. So as you see here, that is a bearish candle, a bearish fair value gap, and then this is a bullish candle, so this is a bullish fair value gap, because as you can see, no wicks touch. The first and the third candle here do not touch together, so this is a fair value gap. So let's jump into what a inversion fair value gap is. Now, all a inverse fair value gap is just a fair value gap that has been disrespected. So here we have this bullish fair value gap, as you can see. I'm on the 2-minute time frame right now, and where does this fair value gap get turned into an inversion? It is right here. Do you see how this candle closes underneath the fair value gap? It doesn't just wick into, it closes below the fair value gap. Therefore, this would now be an inversion fair value gap. So I would like to see price use this box as resistance and then carry on going to the downside, which it does perfectly. So when you are looking at the markets, there is going to be lots of different fair value gaps and inversion fair value gaps, but obviously you're not going to want to take all of them. The way that you find good inversion fair value gaps to use in the markets is going from the higher time frame down to the lower time frame. So as you can see, we have this inversion fair value gap on the 2-minute time frame. But if we look at the 1-minute time frame, we have all of these bullish fair value gaps and bearish fair value gaps. So if I just make this a different color, so as you can see, this is our 1-minute fair value gap, and this inversion fair value gap is extremely big. And although this did work, so if we took a trade here, it would have looked something like this. But the reason why we do not take the inversions on a lower time frame is because you need to take the inversion fair value gap that is on the highest time frame possible. So on the 2-minute, there is just a nicer looking inversion fair value gap. So that is the one we use. But whereas if we go to the 5-minute, time frame, for example, there is no fair value gap to be used as an inversion fair value gap. So once you are looking for these inversion fair value gaps, just make sure you start off on the 5-minute time frame I like to use, and then I go down and check the 4, 3, 2, 1, and make sure that I'm using the highest time frame possible, and also making sure that the higher time frame narrative matches up with the inversion fair value gap. Now, what I mean by that is, if I am bearish on the day, so for example, here I was very bearish. Well, I didn't actually trade, but let's say I was very bearish on Friday, I would only be looking for bullish fair value gaps to sell side liquidity. So I'd only be looking to take bullish inversions. Let's say we have this fair value gap here, which is a bearish fair value gap. If this got inversed, I most likely would not take it to the upside, just because that is not my bias, even though we do have triple equal highs up here, which is a very good sign that price would likely to come up and hit that tomorrow. So equal highs, let me just mark this out so I remember for tomorrow. This will most likely be my target going into Monday's price action, if you want to keep that in mind. Yeah, going off on a bit of a tangent there, but back to the inversion fair value gaps. Now, as I said, you want to make sure that you're using the inversion fair value gaps on the higher time frame, and the way I like to enter into these inversion fair value gap trades is, let's say I have this inversion right here and my target is the downside. So if we go to where the price has violated it, I would enter into my position right here, and then my take profit would be sell side liquidity, and my stop loss would be a candle close back above this fair value gap. Now, what I mean by that is, price action could come here and it could wick upwards like this. It could just wick above this inversion fair value gap here. But if price does not close above this inversion fair value gap, then I would not be exited into the trade. Now, obviously, I'm not explaining the model here. I'm just explaining how I use the inversion fair value gaps. A lot of the time, I won't take specific inversion fair value gaps just because they don't look good to me. You know, that could be a lot of different reasons, like the bias, for example, or if the inversion fair value gap is too small or too big. I don't like taking those. So when you're using inversion fair value gaps, you want to have a lot of screen time using them, because sometimes one inversion just doesn't look good for certain reasons that you can't really put into a model. So don't go out there marking out every fair value gap like this and just shorting as soon as price breaks the inversion fair value gap, because that most likely will not work, as there are just so many in the market. Now, another good example is right here. As you can see, we have lots of fair value gaps, lots of potential inverses in such a short amount of space. Now, the fair value gap that I would use here out of these two is the bottom inversion fair value gap. And the reason for this is because this is just the most dominant one, in my opinion. If price action was to inverse this here, as it did here, let's say here, as you can see, perfect example, price violates this fair value gap right here, but it fills in the fair value gap below. Now, that is why I like to take always the bottom fair value gap, or if this was a bearish example, for example here, with these two fair value gaps, I would always take the top bearish inversion trade, just because even if price inverses this candle here, this fair value gap here, price could always still bounce back from the fair value gap below, like it has done here. So once you are using this inversion model, that is something you want to look out for. Now, this is only a very quick video just explaining a bit more about inverse fair value gaps. Make sure you join my Discord in the description, where I live trade every single day. Thank you for watching.